Hello everyone, welcome to Easy English for Everyone. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, like and share to receive the latest videos. Now let's study together.
Hello everyone, welcome to a story about a very exciting day, a windy day. Many people don't think much about the wind, but today, something special is going to happen. Our story is about a young boy named Jack. Jack woke up early in the morning and looked out his window. The sky was bright, but the trees were swaying wildly. The wind was strong. Jack loved adventures, and he knew that windy days could bring surprises. Would his kite fly higher than ever? Would the wind carry something unexpected his way? Let's find out about Jack's windy day adventure. We will read his story in chapters. Each chapter will be short and easy to understand. We will learn new words and see how Jack faces new challenges and exciting surprises. Are you ready? Let's discover. Chapter 1, Morning Surprise. Jack opened his eyes and looked out the window. The trees were dancing wildly. Their branches moved back and forth, up and down. Leaves flew through the air like little green birds. Wow! It's so windy today, Jack said to himself. Jack got out of bed and went to the kitchen. His mother was making breakfast. Good morning, Mom, Jack said with a smile. Good morning, Jack. Did you see the weather today? It's very windy, his mother replied. Jack nodded. Yes, I saw the trees dancing outside my window. Why is it so windy today? His mother put a plate of pancakes on the table. The weather report said a big storm is coming. But don't worry, it's just wind now. Jack ate his breakfast quickly. He was excited. He loved windy days. They were full of surprises. Mom, can I go to the park today? Jack asked. His mother looked worried. The park? But it's very windy, Jack. Maybe it's better to stay home today. Please, Mom. I want to fly my new kite. I can't fly it without wind, Jack begged. His mother thought for a moment. Okay, but be careful. And come home if the wind gets stronger or if it starts to rain. Thank you, Mom. Jack jumped up and hugged his mother. He ran to his room to get ready. He put on his blue jeans, a warm sweater, and his favorite red jacket. He found his new kite under the bed. It was blue and yellow with a long red tail. Today is going to be a great day, Jack said to himself. Chapter 2, On the Way to the Park. Jack left his house and started walking to the park. The wind pushed against him, making it hard to walk straight. He held his kite tightly. As he walked down the street, he saw many interesting things. A newspaper flew through the air like a bird. A man was chasing his hat down the street. A woman was holding onto her skirt, trying to keep it from flying up. Jack laughed. Windy days were funny days. He passed Mrs. Green's garden. Mrs. Green was an old lady who loved her flowers more than anything. She was outside, trying to protect her plants from the strong wind. Good morning, Mrs. Green, Jack called out. Mrs. Green looked up and saw Jack. Oh, good morning, Jack. Where are you going on this windy day? I'm going to the park to fly my kite, Jack replied, showing her his blue and yellow kite. Mrs. Green shook her head. Be careful, young man. The wind is very strong today. It already broke one of my flower pots. Just then, the wind blew harder. One of Mrs. Green's hats flew off her head. Oh no! My hat, she cried. Jack dropped his kite and ran after the hat. The wind carried it higher and higher. Jack jumped and finally caught it. He brought it back to Mrs. Green. Thank you, Jack. You're a good boy, Mrs. Green said with a smile. She reached into her pocket and took out a candy. Here, take this. Thank you, Mrs. Green, Jack said, putting the candy in his pocket. He picked up his kite and continued on his way to the park. As he walked, the wind seemed to get stronger. It howled around the corners of buildings and whistled through the trees. Jack had to lean forward to walk against it. This is the perfect day for flying a kite, Jack thought. He couldn't wait to get to the park. Chapter 3, At the Park. When Jack arrived at the park, he was surprised. The park was almost empty. Usually, on a Saturday morning, the park was full of children playing, families having picnics, and dogs running around. But today, only a few brave people were there. Jack sought his friend Tom near the big oak tree. Tom was trying to catch leaves as they fell from the tree. Tom! Jack called out, waving his hand. Tom looked up and saw Jack. He smiled and ran towards him. Jack! What are you doing here? It's so windy. Jack showed Tom his kite. I came to fly my kite. Want to join me? Tom's eyes widened. That's a great idea. I've never flown a kite before. The two boys found a good spot in the middle of the park. There were no trees or buildings nearby to block the wind. Okay, I'll hold the kite up, and you hold the string, Jack instructed. When I say go, I'll release the kite, and you start running. Tom nodded, taking the string from Jack. Jack held the kite up, feeling the wind pulling it already. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Go! Jack released the kite, and Tom started running. The kite caught the wind and soared up into the sky. It went higher and higher, its blue and yellow colors bright against the gray clouds. It's flying! It's really flying! Tom shouted with excitement. Jack ran to Tom and looked up at their kite. It was dancing in the sky, just like the trees had danced outside his window that morning. Let me try, Jack said, taking the string from Tom. The boys took turns flying the kite. They ran around the park, laughing and shouting. The wind was their friend today, making their kite dance in the sky. Chapter 4, The Runaway Hat. After a while, more people came to the park. Some came to watch the boys fly their kite. Others came with their own kites, inspired by Jack and Tom. An old man sat on a bench nearby, watching the boys with a smile. He wore a fancy black hat on his head. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew through the park. It was so strong that it blew the old man's hat right off his head. My hat, the old man cried, trying to stand up. The hat flew high into the air, spinning and twirling in the wind. It flew towards Jack and Tom. "Look!" Tom pointed at the flying hat. Someone lost their hat. Jack looked up and saw the black hat coming towards them. Without thinking, he let go of the kite string to try and catch the hat. Oh no! The kite! Tom shouted as the kite, now free, flew higher and higher into the sky. Jack didn't catch the hat. The wind carried it even higher. And now their kite was flying away too. The old man walked up to the boys. "I'm sorry about your kite, young man," he said to Jack. "You shouldn't have let it go because of my old hat." Jack felt sad. His new kite was gone. But he tried to be brave. "It's okay, sir. Your hat is important too." The old man smiled kindly at Jack. "You're a good boy. But look! Your kite isn't gone yet." Jack looked up. The kite was still visible, flying high in the sky. But it was getting smaller and smaller as the wind carried it away. "We need to follow it," Tom said. "Maybe we can catch it before it lands somewhere." The boys thanked the old man and started running in the direction the kite was flying. The wind pushed them forward, helping them run faster. "There it goes." Jack pointed as they ran out of the park and onto the street. Chapter 5: The Chase. Jack and Tom ran down the street, following the flying kite. The wind was still strong, pushing them forward. But it also made it hard to see. Their eyes watered, and their hair blew wildly around their faces. "Can you still see it?" Tom asked, panting from the run. Jack squinted his eyes. "Yes, it's over there. Above the big tree." The boys ran towards the big tree. But by the time they got there, the kite had moved again. Now it was flying towards the town center. "Come on," Jack urged, and they continued running. They passed many people on their way. Everyone was struggling with the wind. A woman was chasing her scarf. A man was trying to close his umbrella that had turned inside out. A group of children were laughing as their balloon floated away. "Excuse me. Coming through," Jack called out as they weaved through the crowd. They reached the town center. It was a big square with a fountain in the middle. The wind created waves in the fountain water, splashing it onto the ground. "There it is!" Tom shouted, pointing up. The kite was circling above the fountain. It seemed like the wind was playing a game, keeping the kite just out of reach. "If it comes down a bit, maybe we can catch it," Jack said, watching the kite's movements. They waited, their eyes fixed on the kite. The wind slowed down for a moment, and the kite started to descend. "Now!" Jack shouted. The boys ran towards the fountain. Jack climbed onto the edge of the fountain, reaching up as high as he could. His fingers brushed against the kite's tail, but he couldn't grab it. "A bit higher, Jack," Tom encouraged. Jack stood on his tiptoes, stretching his arm as far as it would go. Just as his fingers were about to close around the kite's string, a strong gust of wind blew. The kite shot up high into the sky again. No! Jack cried out in frustration. To make matters worse, Jack lost his balance. He wobbled on the edge of the fountain for a moment, then fell backward into the water with a big splash. Jack! Tom gasped, running to the fountain. Jack sat in the water, completely soaked. The cold water made him shiver. But then he looked at Tom's shocked face and started laughing. Tom stared at him for a moment, then joined in the laughter. "You look like a wet dog," he said between giggles. Jack stood up, water dripping from his clothes. "At least the wind can't blow me away now that I'm heavy with water," he joked. They laughed again, but their laughter was short-lived. The kite was still flying away, now heading towards the old clock tower. "We need to keep following it," Jack said, stepping out of the fountain. "But first, let's find something to help us catch it when it comes down again." Chapter 6: The Helper. Jack and Tom looked around the town center for something to help them catch the kite. They spotted a small shop nearby with a sign that read Pete's Hardware Store. "Maybe they have something we can use," Jack suggested. They entered the shop, the bell above the door jingling to announce their arrival. The shop was warm and smelled of wood and metal. An old man stood behind the counter, arranging some tools. "Hello, boys," the man greeted them with a smile. "What can I do for you on this windy day?" "Hello, sir," Jack said politely. "We're trying to catch my kite. It flew away because of the wind. Do you have something that could help us?" The man, who they assumed was Pete, scratched his chin thoughtfully. "A runaway kite, huh? Let me see." He disappeared into the back of the shop and returned a moment later with a long pole. "This is a telescopic pole. It can extend to reach high places." Jack's eyes lit up. "That's perfect. How much does it cost?" Pete looked at Jack's wet clothes and Tom's hopeful face. He smiled kindly. "For you boys, it's free to borrow. Just bring it back when you're done." "Really?" "Thank you, sir," Jack said gratefully. "Thank you," Tom echoed. With the pole in hand, they left the shop and looked up at the sky. The kite was still visible, now circling around the clock tower. "Let's go," Jack said, and they started running again. The clock tower was the tallest building in town. It stood in the middle of the town square, its face visible from almost anywhere in the town. As they approached, they could see that the kite had gotten tangled in the hands of the clock. "Oh no," Jack groaned. "How are we going to reach it now? The pole isn't that long." They stood at the base of the tower, looking up helplessly at the kite. Just then, a man in a uniform approached them. He wore a badge that read Town Maintenance. "Are you boys looking at the clock or at that kite stuck up there?" the man asked. "It's my kite," Jack explained. "It flew away because of the wind, and now it's stuck." The maintenance man looked up at the kite, then at the boys. "I see. Well, it just so happens that I was on my way to do some maintenance on the clock. I could get your kite down for you." Jack and Tom exchanged excited glances. "Could you really?" Jack asked hopefully. "Sure," the man replied. "But I can't do it right now. I have another job to finish first. If you boys want to wait, I'll be back in about an hour. Jack looked at Tom. What do you think? Should we wait? We've come this far, Tom reasoned. And it's your new kite. I think we should wait. Jack nodded. Okay, we'll wait. Thank you, sir. The maintenance man smiled. No problem. There's a cafe just across the square. You might want to wait there. It's warmer, and you look like you could use a change of clothes, he added, looking at Jack's wet clothes. With that, the maintenance man went on his way, and the boys headed to the cafe. Chapter 7: The Cafe. The cafe was small but cozy. The smell of fresh coffee and baked goods filled the air. A few people sat at tables, sipping hot drinks and chatting quietly. A young woman greeted them as they entered. "Hello, boys." "Oh my, you're soaking wet," she said, looking at Jack. "I fell into the fountain," Jack explained, feeling a bit embarrassed. The woman smiled kindly. "Well, let's get you dried up. I have a small heater in the back room. You can sit near it to dry your clothes." She led them to a small room at the back of the cafe. There was a heater in the corner and a few chairs. "Make yourselves comfortable. What would you like to drink? Hot chocolate, maybe?" "Yes, please," both boys said in unison. The woman left, and Jack positioned himself near the heater. The warmth felt good against his cold, wet clothes. "Do you think the maintenance man will really help us?" Tom asked, sitting on a chair. "I hope so," Jack replied. "Otherwise, my mom will be upset." It was a new kite. The woman returned with 2 mugs of hot chocolate topped with whipped cream. "Here you go, boys. It's on the house." "Thank you," they said, taking the mugs gratefully. As they sipped their hot chocolate, they told the woman about their adventure. She listened with interest, sometimes smiling, sometimes looking concerned. "That's quite an adventure for a Saturday morning," she said when they finished their story. "I hope you get your kite back." Just then, the cafe door opened, and a girl about their age walked in. She had long brown hair tied in a ponytail and wore a yellow raincoat. "Hi, Lisa," the woman greeted her. "Are you here for the usual?" "Yes, please, Aunt Mary," the girl replied. The woman, who they now knew was Mary, turned to the boys. "This is my niece, Lisa. Lisa, these are Jack and Tom." Jack introduced them. "Nice to meet you," Lisa said with a smile. "Why are you wet?" she asked Jack curiously. Jack felt his cheeks turn red. "I fell into the fountain while trying to catch my kite." Lisa's eyes widened. "Your kite flew away? In this wind, it could end up anywhere." "It's stuck on the clock tower," Tom explained. "We're waiting for the maintenance man to help us get it down." "The clock tower? That's high," Lisa said. "Can I wait with you? I love adventures." The boys looked at each other, then nodded. "Sure," Jack said. Mary brought Lisa a hot chocolate, and the 3 children sat together, talking and waiting. Jack's clothes were almost dry now, and he was feeling much better. After what seemed like a long time, the cafe door opened again. It was the maintenance man. "Are you boys ready?" he asked. "I'm heading to the clock tower now." Jack and Tom jumped up from their seats. "Yes, we're ready," Jack said excitedly. "Can I come too?" Lisa asked. The maintenance man looked at Mary, who nodded her approval. "Okay, but all of you need to stay back while I climb up to get the kite. It's not safe for children to be climbing the tower." They thanked Mary for the hot chocolate and left the cafe, following the maintenance man to the clock tower. Chapter 8: The Rescue. The maintenance man led the children to the base of the clock tower. The wind had calmed down a bit, but it was still strong enough to make their hair blow wildly. "Now, you three stay here," the maintenance man instructed. "I'll go up and get the kite." He unlocked a small door at the base of the tower and disappeared inside. The children waited anxiously, their eyes fixed on the kite still tangled in the clock's hands. "What if he can't reach it?" Jack worried. "He will," Lisa assured him. "Mr. Johnson is very good at his job. He once rescued my cat from the top of a tree." "That's his name?" "Mr. Johnson?" Tom asked. Lisa nodded. "Yes, he's been the town maintenance man for as long as I can remember." They continued to wait, occasionally looking up at the clock to see if there was any sign of Mr. Johnson. After a few minutes, they saw a window open near the top of the tower. Mr. Johnson's head appeared, and he waved at them. "Look! There he is." Tom pointed. Mr. Johnson reached out of the window with a long pole, similar to the one Pete had lent them. He carefully maneuvered it towards the kite. The children held their breath as he tried to untangle the kite from the clock's hands. After a few attempts, Mr. Johnson managed to free the kite. But as soon as it was free, the wind caught it again. The kite flew away from the tower, heading towards a nearby tree. "Oh no!" Jack cried. "It's flying away again." But then, something unexpected happened. The kite string got tangled in the branches of the tree. The kite was stuck again, but this time, much closer to the ground. "Quick! Let's go!" Tom said, and they ran towards the tree. The tree was tall, but not as tall as the clock tower. Jack looked up at his kite, tangled in the branches. "I think I can climb up and get it," he said. "Be careful, Jack," Lisa warned. "The branches might be slippery." Jack started climbing the tree. He was a good climber, having spent many hours climbing the trees in his backyard. Slowly but surely, he made his way up the tree, getting closer to his kite. Tom and Lisa watched nervously from below. The wind had picked up again, making the branches sway. Finally, Jack reached the branch where his kite was tangled. He carefully straddled the branch and reached for the kite. His fingers closed around the string, and he gently untangled it from the branches. "I got it," he called down triumphantly, holding up the kite. "Great job, Jack!" Tom cheered. "Now come down carefully," Lisa added. Jack tucked the kite into his jacket and started his descent. He was about halfway down when he heard a voice. "Need some help there, young man?" It was Mr. Johnson. He had come out of the clock tower and spotted Jack in the tree. "I got my kite," Jack called down, showing the kite peeping out from his jacket. "Well done," Mr. Johnson said. "But let me help you down just to be safe." He steadied Jack as he climbed down the last few branches. When Jack's feet touched the ground, he felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Thank you for your help, Mr. Johnson," Jack said gratefully. "No problem, boy. I'm glad you got your kite back," Mr. Johnson replied. "Now, you children should head home. The wind is getting stronger, and I heard there might be rain later." The children thanked Mr. Johnson again and started walking home, Jack clutching his recovered kite tightly. Chapter 9: The Storm. As the children walked back through the town, they noticed that the wind was indeed getting stronger. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, and the air felt heavy with the promise of rain. "I think we should hurry," Lisa said, looking up at the sky worriedly. "It looks like a storm is coming." They quickened their pace, moving against the wind that was now pushing them back. Jack held his kite close, making sure it wouldn't fly away again. They had just reached the park when the first drops of rain began to fall. The drops were big and heavy, splattering on the ground with audible plops. "We need to find shelter," Tom said, as the rain started falling faster. They looked around and spotted a gazebo in the middle of the park. "Over there," Jack pointed, and they ran towards it. By the time they reached the gazebo, the rain was pouring down in sheets. Lightning flashed across the sky, followed by a loud rumble of thunder. "Wow, that was close," Lisa said, her eyes wide. The children sat on the bench in the gazebo, watching the storm unfold before them. The rain was so heavy that they could barely see beyond the park. The trees bent under the force of the wind, and puddles formed on the ground. "I've never seen a storm like this," Tom said, his voice filled with a mixture of fear and awe. "Me neither," Jack agreed. "I'm glad we're not out in that." Despite the shelter of the gazebo, they could feel the spray of rain carried by the wind. The air was cool and smelled of wet earth and leaves. "This is actually kind of nice," Lisa said after a while. Watching the storm from a safe place, the boys nodded in agreement. There was something mesmerizing about the power of nature. The way the wind bent the trees, the rhythm of the rain hitting the roof of the gazebo, the dramatic flashes of lightning followed by the rumble of thunder. "Do you think it will last long?" Jack asked. "Probably not," Lisa replied. "Summer storms usually pass quickly." They continued to watch the storm, talking and laughing, sharing stories and jokes. Despite the wild weather, they were having a good time. After about an hour, the rain began to ease. The thunder became less frequent, and the lightning faded away. The wind, however, was still strong. "I think we can go now," Jack said, standing up. "My house is not far from here." "Mine is on the other side of town," Lisa said. "But the rain has almost stopped, so I should be fine." "I can walk with you part of the way," Tom offered. "My house is in that direction too." The children stepped out of the gazebo. The park looked different after the storm. The grass was wet and glistening, the paths were muddy, and leaves and small branches were scattered everywhere. "Look at all the puddles," Jack exclaimed. It's like a mini lake in the park. Unable to resist, Jack jumped into a nearby puddle, sending water splashing in all directions. Tom and Lisa laughed, then joined in the fun. They jumped from puddle to puddle, splashing and laughing. Finally, tired and muddy but happy, they decided it was time to go home. They walked to the park entrance together, then split up to go their separate ways. Bye, Lisa. It was nice meeting you, Jack said. Bye, Jack. Bye, Tom. I'm glad you got your kite back, Lisa replied with a smile. Bye. Tom waved. Jack and Tom watched as Lisa walked away, her yellow raincoat bright against the gray sky. I should go too, Tom said. My mom will be worried. Yeah, me too, Jack agreed. See you tomorrow at school? Definitely, Tom nodded. We can tell everyone about our adventure. With that, the two friends parted ways, each heading to his own home. Chapter 10, Home Sweet Home. Jack walked home slowly, his kite safely tucked under his arm. The wind had calmed down considerably after the storm, and the rain had stopped completely. The air smelled fresh and clean. As he walked, Jack thought about the day's adventure. It had been a day full of excitement, challenges, and new friendships. He smiled to himself, feeling happy despite being tired and a bit muddy. When he reached his house, he was surprised to see his mother standing at the door, looking worried. Jack, where have you been? I was so worried, she exclaimed when she saw him. I'm sorry, Mom, Jack apologized. My kite flew away, and we had to chase it. Then we got caught in the storm and had to wait in the gazebo at the park. His mother's expression softened. Come inside. You're all wet and muddy. Inside, his mother helped him out of his wet clothes and into a warm bath. The warm water felt good against his skin, washing away the mud and fatigue of the day. After the bath, Jack sat at the kitchen table, wrapped in a warm robe, drinking hot soup. He told his mother about his adventure, about Tom and Lisa, about the kite getting stuck on the clock tower, about Mr. Johnson helping them, and about watching the storm from the gazebo. His mother listened with interest, occasionally asking questions or expressing concern. When Jack finished his story, she smiled. Well, it sounds like you had quite an adventure today, she said. I'm glad you're safe and that you got your kite back. But next time, please be more careful. And call me if you're going to be late. I will, Mom, Jack promised. And guess what? I made a new friend today. Her name is Lisa. That's wonderful, Jack, his mother said, ruffling his hair affectionately. Now, finish your soup and get some rest. You've had a busy day. After dinner, Jack went to his room. He placed his kite on his desk, planning to check it for damage tomorrow. Right now, he was too tired. He got into bed and pulled the covers up to his chin. Outside, the wind had died down completely. The storm had passed, leaving behind a peaceful quiet. As Jack drifted off to sleep, he thought about his windy day adventure. It had been scary at times, but also exciting and fun. He had made a new friend, and he had his kite back, all thanks to the wind. Maybe windy days aren't so bad after all, Jack thought as he fell asleep, smiling. The end.